Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to this edition of Quarantine Collections. My name is Travis Gilbert. I'm the Educator and Collections Coordinator here at the Old Baldy Foundation. And we're so thankful that you can join us for another virtual program here at the Old Baldy Foundation. This morning in this edition of Quarantine Collections, I decided to pull out something that hopefully will pique all y'all's interest. And we're actually going to make this like a part one, and we're going to pull out another document tomorrow morning that kind of piggybacks what is going to be discussed this morning with this document in our archives. And this document is called A Study of the State Uses of Smith Island. If you recall, Smith Island is just another name for Bald Head. This was published in the year 1970, and it was prepared under the direction of the Department of Conservation and Development for the state of North Carolina, and it was published and created at the behest of North Carolina's Democratic Governor Bob Scott. Bob Scott was the governor of the state from 1969 to 1973. And he was he was a man that would play an instrumental and very significant role in the future of Bald Head Island. Bob Scott came to office at a time when Bald Head Island was owned by an entrepreneur, a businessman named Frank Sherrill. Frank Sherrill purchased Bald Head Island in the year 1938 from Brunswick County. The island was previously owned by Thomas Franklin Boyd, and when Thomas Franklin Boyd passed away in the year 1934, his estate failed to pay taxes on the island for about 4 years. So of course the island foreclosed, County of Brunswick took over the land holdings, and Frank Sherrill purchased this island. Frank Sherrill might be familiar for you all because he is the owner of S&W Cafeteria. So I'm sure some of you out there know S&W Cafeteria, based in Charlotte. He's the man that owned Bald Head Island from 1938 until 1971. Well, during Frank Sherrill's tenure, Frank Sherrill had began negotiating, began communicating with several development companies. Some here in North Carolina, others like in Miami. And these various development companies would come up with a plan in order to develop Bald Head Island into a resort and into a community. And each time the development company had a shot at envisioning what Bald Head Island could look like, it grew the alarm of environmental activists. And those environmental activists found a sympathetic ear and a sympathetic partner in this Democratic Governor, Bob Scott. So at the tail end of Frank Sherrill owning Bald Head Island, Bob Scott led an effort to publish a report, a study, on what this island could look like if it were owned by the state government in order to create this island into a state park or some sort of state preserved facility or land. And that report was published right in the middle of Bob Scott's tenure, and it is here in our archives as a study of the state uses of Smith Island. So before we delve into some of the details that I wanted to highlight in this report, I want to give a shout out to y'all out there listening. I would love to hear from you. Drop us a line in the comments. Let me know where you're listening from and your connection to Bald Head Island. If you'd like us to elaborate on something, or if you have any questions, of course, place those in the comments and we'll get back to you. I'd love to hear from you all out there. Good morning to you. So the report in the abstract, it really just says that the object is to investigate the possible state uses of these 11,000 acres of barrier islands at the mouth of the Cape Fear River. All right, it's going to find the feasibility of what different uses the state could nurture on these barrier islands if they were to purchase and preserve this island. The scope was going to be, it says, the investigation originated through the request of Governor Robert Scott for state uses of Smith Island at the mouth of the Cape Fear River. And it says the study sets forth objectives the state could achieve in its use of Smith Island, described as previous attempts at development of the island, identifies environmental constraints associated with uses of the island, and describes and evaluates the certain uses the state could make. So the objectives, they said there are four kind of objectives that kind of create a framework for this discussion, this narrative in the report. And it says, as a framework for decision making about Smith Island, there are certain general objectives that the state may seek to achieve through uses that accomplish specific objectives. And these four are, we're going to balance freedom of the individual, we're going to balance physical security, we're going to balance environmental preservation, and we're going to balance economic well-being. Those four frameworks, we're going to try to find a balance between all four. Freedom of the individual, the physical security, securing the environment, and the economic prosperity of this area and this county. We're going to try to balance all four of those in creating a conclusion on how the state could not only own this island, but also balance all four of those perspectives. And they believed that they could do so by creating kind of 5 goals in owning this island. And those 5 goals are going to be the vehicles in which the state is going to achieve those 4 frameworks. And that is recreation, education, research, economic growth, and environmental protection. So they kind of come up with a chart, and it shows you the different types of facilities that they say that they could create here on the island. Let me read this little passage for you. When costs of the state use of Smith Island are considered, it is apparent there will be some sort of cost for acquisition, followed by the cost of whatever types and amounts of development are planned. The price for the island was sold in July of 1970 was reported at $5.5 million, including a mortgage taken by the seller. The additional direct costs of developing minimum facilities for the educational, recreational, environmental protection use could range from $70,000 to $425,000 for the facilities together with docks access by ferry. Road access, which was a possibility in 1970, we'll delve into that a little bit more, but road access might add as much as $1 million to these costs. In addition, there were expenditures for operation and maintenance annually. These costs, of course, are minimal since additional basic units of recreation or educational facilities could be built if needed. Costs for the uses are reported in dollars and development of various recreational or educational facilities. For research, that range could be very large, from temporary storage areas for instruments and equipment to permanent laboratory and training facilities complete with residences. It does appear, however, that the latter is being sought by the research community, which prefer to have its laboratories closer to its supporting facilities, libraries, computers, and permanent residence. In any development, careful attention must be paid to alterations that would diminish the fisheries output of the marshes and estuaries around the island. Any such effects would have to be considered as costs of using the island. So very, very interesting how they're outweighing all these kind of reports. I'm going to go to part 3 and read some excerpts for you. Part 3 is entitled State Objectives to be Achieved by State Use of Smith Island. And it follows those 5 frameworks, those goals or objectives for the state. So first of all was recreation. And the most, they say that recreation is clearly the principal objective, the easiest objective to achieve in state ownership of Bald Head Island. It says that parts of the island offer excellent opportunities for ocean swimming and other activities associated with beaches. The white sand beaches are generally wide and shove off gently into the water. A second type of recreation is that of the natural area. This use stresses not the activity in the individual, but his ability to observe and enjoy ongoing processes of nature. The ebb and flow of the tides, the breaking of the waves, development of dunes and forests, the ongoing lives of marine plants, animals, turtles, raccoons, and many other species of shore and subtropical birds. In addition, they say that there is a framework around Smith Island that offers a template for state ownership of this place. They're describing Fort Fisher and Brunswick towns, two state historic sites in this area. They're also saying that elaborate gardens in Wilmington and Orton Plantation. This is the time when Orton Plantation is open to the public. In addition to the battleship North Carolina. So the second goal is they say that there's all kinds of educational opportunities here. Say that programs could focus on the processes affecting the ecology of various shellfish that contribute much to the economy of the area. Also worthy of note would be a maritime forest of live oaks, the bird life of the area, and the processes affecting the shoreline. Also, there's cultural history that could be focused here with a small museum. Third objective, research. It says Smith Island represents an important potential site for research precisely because it has achieved relatively little use by man in the recent past. Therefore, it can provide a basis of comparison and contrast with other areas that have undergone a greater degree of use by humans. It says there have been several Sea Grant programs that have used the island that create a precedent. So the last two are the economic objectives and the environmental objectives. They said the economic objectives is that there are jobs. It says that a lot of the differences in the debate about ownership of the island result as what their effects would be on the local population and their economic well-being. That the more you develop this place, the more local jobs that will be created. And Brunswick County is not the county of Brunswick that we know today, with these retirement communities and these gated communities such as St. James and whatnot. This is still one of the poorest counties in North Carolina in 1970. So the economic opportunity and the tax base that could be afforded Brunswick County by developing Bald Head Island was an important and significant component in this dialogue and in this discussion and debate about who should own Bald Head Island and what this place would look like going into the future. Southport and locals, they saw a lot of jobs and a lot of tax potential on developing this island. So that's going to color that dialogue. And the environmental impact, of course, is that this idea that included in this heading are continued production of shellfish in the estuaries, fishing, protection of the channel for ocean-going vessels. We want to protect this island in order to continue the fishing and to continue use of the port. So the conclusions based on all these ideas of what it is, based on these 5 kind of goals, is that they basically say that, in addition, emphasis placed on general objectives the state wishes to achieve for its citizens will also affect the decision complex. If primary stress is placed on individual freedom, this leads to considering that all the benefits, that whether freedom for all persons or particular groups, that you want to preserve this island. On the other hand, as we were discussing, if economic growth is a primary reason for the program, then a program involving Smith Island must be weighed against alternative ways for expanding the economy of the area. These comments suggest that the nature of interrelations amongst general objectives and the context in which the decision-making about Smith Island must be considered. So if you take away from individual freedom, you may add economic opportunity to the area, and so forth. So technically it appears that Smith Island can be developed for any of the uses the state might make of it. Land and water access routes are feasible. Water is available in some locations. Electric power can be brought in along a road. On the other hand, development of the island for the state uses must be done in considerable care in order to avoid damage to the marshes and the estuaries that provide major support for the area's fishing industry. They say the benefits of developing Bald Head Island, the largest number of persons would benefit directly from development of Smith Island are picnickers and swimmers. This benefit would be offset by the somewhat higher cost of building and operating such recreational areas at relatively an inaccessible location compared to other areas. If areas for camping and or cabins are created, the number of users will be smaller, but the experiences will be more extended and perhaps will have a greater impact upon the individuals in terms of their perception of this natural area. Thus, the uses of Smith Island will fully utilize its special characteristics, its isolation, its lack of previous development, its direct exposure to the ocean, its habitat for species not found in more developed areas, and its wilderness experience. The utilization of the island for educational experiences centered on understanding the natural processes would most thoroughly employ the unique access to the island for sizable numbers of persons directly. They're saying that this island is going to offer a wonderful educational classroom, and the more people you bring over here and educate about the ecology of this place, the more appreciation they will groom and foster within themselves for wilderness areas like Smith Island. Researchers can make use of unique features of Smith Island. So they're saying a combination of uses, the various uses the state might make of Smith Island, but discussed above, and they are independent, isolated from one another. This is done for clarity. It should be recognized, however, that both administrative and programmatic reasons is it's likely the state will combine two or more uses. With suitable planning, this is not only possible, but desirable, since many of them complement one another. For example, swimming in an area makes a camping area more desirable. It is only necessary the island be given over exclusively to not one use. It is only required that the uses be developed so the side effects of one do not impair the other. So the final remarks, it is apparent that the question of the state uses of Smith Island has many sides and that each individual use will have the benefits and costs that differ from one another. Moreover, development by the state of some use on Smith Island is one of only several ways in which certain objectives, such as economic growth, might be achieved. The reader may be unsatisfied with this report because it does not end with one clear statement for use. The primary reason for this is the choices among us are specifically reserved to state decision makers because it is they who ultimately rank the objectives they wish to further for the citizens of North Carolina through use of Smith Island. All right? So they're leaving it open-ended, but they're saying that it's going to estimate $42.6 million to buy the island and to achieve all these objectives such as recreational, educational facilities, preservation of the environment, and the economic growth. So they leave it open-ended, but it's very clear that the conclusion of this report is this idea that there is a lot that could be said here. So they may not say the state should buy the island, but they're leaving with Bob Scott an open-ended question, and they're showing him the potential, the what-ifs, if the state would buy Bald Head Island. So the open-ended question, or the open-ended answer, is much louder than any definitive answer they could have provided. So what happens with this? Well, it goes back to Bob Scott, and then the next year, in 1971, Frank Sherrill sells Bald Head Island to Carolina Cape Fear Corporation. And once Carolina Cape Fear Corporation purchases Bald Head Island 1 year later in 1971, there is no more opportunity. The opportunity is gone for the state or the federal government to purchase this island. It would be no more. They lost their shot. They didn't move quickly enough before Frank Sherrill sold it to the island. What were the plans? I want to leave you with this. What were the plans that kind of created impetus for this report and really began this discussion at a state level on why they should buy Bald Head Island? Well, as we recall, Frank Sherrill bought the island in 1938. All right? And one of the first reports or plans that are created is called the Fraser Plan. And it was created in September of 1963 from Fraser and Associates down in Florida, in Miami. And Mr. Sherrill hired Fraser and Associates in order to come up for a development plan. And it is often referred to as the something like Bermuda Plan, because that's what they were trying to achieve here. It would create a completely self-contained year-round residential community of up to 60,000 people, plus 15,000 visitors a year. Incredible, right? There's going to be an airport on Battery Island. There's going to be 2 shopping centers located on the island. 13 public schools, 1 private school, and a future center for higher education, 2 yacht clubs, 2 golf courses, a gun club, a riding club, several marinas, park and picnic areas, and a large amusement park, which most famously, in one of the depictions created by Fraser and Associates in 1963, one of the amusement parks featured a Ferris wheel. And that is an image that a lot of folks can't get out of their head because they know what Bald Head Island looks like today. And they see that artistic representation from Fraser and Associates' plan as a Ferris wheel. And it's hard to imagine a Ferris wheel on Bald Head Island. But it doesn't stop there. Industry would be located on Battery and Striking Islands. They included biological industries, dental and surgical and optical equipment industries, electrical and mechanical components, game and toys, signs and advertising, and similar labor-oriented light industry. Most importantly, the access to this community of 60,000 people would be a state-built highway from Fort Fisher in the north, 9.5 miles down the East Beach, and a private airport on Battery Island to kind of induce this. So as you can understand, when 1963 rolls along and Fraser and Associates creates this plan and it's released on the behest of Frank Sherrill, yeah, of course, it is going to get the attraction of environmental activists a few years before the state is commissioned. But it didn't stop there. There's one more plan, and it is called the Fraser Plan, and that was released 6 years after the Fraser and Associates plan in the year 1969. And it was written by Charles E. Fraser. He was the developer for Hilton Head down in South Carolina. And he negotiated with Frank Sherrill not like Fraser and Associates. It was different. Fraser and Associates were going to develop this island under the behest or under the ownership of Frank Sherrill. Charles E. Fraser, he wanted to purchase. He negotiated purchasing this island from Frank Sherrill in order to kind of send out his own plan. Fraser abandoned his plans after it became known that the state was going to block any of his developments here on the island. The state was so alarmed by the Fraser and Associates plan from 1963, it became very clear that they were going to do their very best to block any plan that was created under Charles E. Fraser. Curious enough, one of the components of the Fraser Plan in 1969 that is with us today, it says that the development of Smith Island included only 9,000 the Fraser Plan development of Smith Island involved only the 3,000 acres of land area. The 9,000 acres of salt marsh were to be given up by a quitclaim deed to the state, with the understanding that they were going to be preserved with no dredging and filling, with the requirement that the state build on salt marsh. So that was a big component with the Rader and Associates plan. They were going to fill in much of the saltwater marsh and dredge finger canals so folks could have access to their boats from their own dock at their own home. And the Charles E. Fraser plan creates a precedent for donating the 9,000 acres of saltwater marsh on this island to the state so they could preserve it. And that's a precedent, all right? Now, the Fraser Plan, of course, does not go into fruition, and that is going to directly result with, around a year later, negotiations being started up with a new company called Carolina Cape Fear Corporation that eventually buys the island. Now, Governor Bob Scott lost his opportunity when this was published in 1970, because this is published simultaneously with Carolina Cape Fear Corporation buying the island. But Governor Bob Scott is going to fight Carolina Cape Fear Corporation along the way. And he is going to hold up Carolina Cape Fear Corporation's development of this island by refusing to release the permit to construct the marina. And without a marina, and without a road, how are you going to spur development on this island? Because you need a ferry service if you're not going to have a road, and a ferry needs a marina. It's not until 1973 when Bob Scott leaves office and the first Republican governor in the state of North Carolina since 1896 is inaugurated. James Holshouser is inaugurated in 1973, and that is the year that Carolina Cape Fear Corporation finally sees progress. A year later, in 1974, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is going to allow Carolina Cape Fear Corporation a permit to dredge and construct a marina. But of course, it's going to be too little too late for Carolina Cape Fear Corporation. They're going to go bankrupt over the fight with the previous governor, Bob Scott, in terms of this marina. And their land holding here is going to be reverted to their principal stakeholder, Builders Investment Group, BIG. It's a company out of Pennsylvania. So, in conclusion, although the ideas from this report commissioned by Governor Bob Scott were never achieved on Bald Head Island, it directly influenced later developers. It drove one into bankruptcy, and it influenced that 9,000 acres of saltwater marsh to be donated to the state of North Carolina. So, at first glance, it may seem like this was a failure, but it certainly left its mark on what we know as Bald Head Island today. And tomorrow, there's one other report from the 1960s that had a major role in influencing the development of this island and its preservation of its natural resources. So tomorrow we'll bring you a part 2 of that other report. It was authored by Dr. Arthur Cooper, and it is an equally important document, again, to the development of this island and this island's character as we've all come to love it and know it today. So stay tuned for tomorrow, and we'll bring you that other report. This afternoon, we're going to be taking you out to the field for another edition of Touring with Travis. I see we have some comments. I was kind of lecturing there for a minute. Sorry, folks. Mackie says, I love this history. Mackie, good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. And Kara saying, wow, is difficult to imagine. I think you're referring to 60,000 people in a Ferris wheel. It is very difficult to imagine with the Rader and Associates. I think if you Google it, I'll try to post in the comments. I think we have some artistic renderings, some architectural renderings that kind of show you what this looked like. And Patty Henson is saying, good job today. Thanks, Patty. Thank you for joining in from out there in Missouri. I hope that it's less rainy out there today. So folks, I will see you all this afternoon for an edition of Touring with Travis. Thank you for joining us today. I'm hoping that you all are healthy out there, and we will see you at a future episode. Thanks, everybody.